Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I got the radio all recapped except for the filter caps. I'm debating whether or not I want to open up that block, which could be loaded with tar, or just put the caps on the outside, and I may just do it on the outside. I left a message with Bob and told him we're going to have to go with a regular speaker in here, and the ballast is burnt out. One element is good. And what I did is I put voltages on the electrolytic with my ICO 950 with the radio off, of course, no tubes in it, and brought the voltage, let it climb up till 143 volts. And it took a while to form up, probably about 15 minutes or so. So what I did at that time is put all the tubes back in and powered it up with the clip leads on the ballast pins where the two yellow butt connectors were, putting the neutral on the chassis. I did not modify the switch yet. I just left it that way and just turned the switch on and put the leads on it. Ran it through the dim bulb, the isolation, brought the voltage up. Absolutely nothing. No tubes lit, nothing. I got a reading of 117 ohms. I can't remember what pins. Okay. All right, now we're using clip leads in addition to the leads that are on the meter. So these are these cheap Chinese test leads. We're not too worried about perfectly zero, but it's not bad, but to give you an idea. All right, now I think pin 8 is the keyway here. All right, I think the only thing I got out of this thing was pin 8 was one of them, if I'm not mistaken. All right, let's try 7 and 8. Let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 8. Nothing. 3 and 8. All right, now it's 114 ohms. I was getting 117 earlier today and 119 the other day. But all right, so between pins 3 and 8, that's what I'm getting. Between pins 2 and 8, nothing. Between pin 1 and 8, nothing. I tried all other combinations off camera earlier, and that's the only reading I get. All right, I replaced the antenna capacitor, and both of these schematics give different values for the antenna capacitor. I believe this says a 005. On this schematic down here, it's an 01. This is a 002, I believe. But whatever was in there, I replaced it with the same. The same way with this here capacitor, which was this one. That's a 0.05. That was right there. It was actually this way. And so I put an 047 in there. On the schematic, it's different on both. So this schematic has been helpful. This is This is the one I had, the first one I downloaded, and it's also the one John linked me to, so it's the same thing. It's the Air King 701, 702, and 705 right here. I also checked all the dog bone resistors, and they're all within, the highest one, any dog bone that's in here is within 20%. The rest are all within 10%. And so what I did is I took out the cap, and this is a this is the 1 megohm resistor. Neither schematic showed that. It showed a different value, but that's what's in here. That's what the color code was, and that's what I measured. And so I put that back in, and I added the capacitor to it. I took the whole thing out, and I just twisted them together and soldered them and put them in. So that takes care of this. I tested all the tubes. Of course, you can't test the I-tube in a tube tester. All the tubes test good. With the exception of the 43, I have a short in position A on my Radio City Products 308 tube tester. When it heats up, position A on the switch shows short. Emission is good. Either the 6D6 or the 6C6, one of them is borderline, just barely into the green, and there's no shorts on any tubes, and the rectifier tubes is good. So all the tubes are basically good in here, with the exception of the 43, which seems to have a short. I left a message with Bob, and we got enough room here. You can see where this chassis has been cut out. Now, one of my viewers, and I don't remember who it was, gave me a link to a YouTube video of a guy that was restoring or showed what he did on his radio, which is quite similar to this. Had the same tube variable capacitor and so forth, and he showed it all taken down and everything else. I'm not going to do that. I'm repairing this. I'm not totally restoring it. I'm just getting it restored and in working order, and anything that's bad gets replaced. But on that video, it showed a field coil speaker and an output transformer. So this cutout in the chassis here indicates that could be it could take a different kind of speaker, but this would have to be taken out. On the electrolytic condenser block, this may be tarred. And so I think the best option would be to leave this alone. Don't drill out the rivets, because, you pry this open, it's probably loaded with tar. And I don't want to deal with that mess. And it's not a museum piece. I'm repairing this for Bob, trying to get it working. So what I think I'll do is just put a couple of electrolytics up underneath here. And I've seen it done on other radios of this vintage. Not a problem whatsoever. You got capacitors here, you got them here, and so on. Now that long silver capacitor, which is right here, electrolytic condenser, it's a 35 volt 5 microfarad capacitor. It's a cathode bypass capacitor for the audio output tube, the 43. I boosted it up a little bit. I had a 4.7, which is close to 5. So I decided to put a 10 in there. And look how small that is at 50 volts instead of 35. That's what I had. I didn't have anything in between. The other one would have been 25 volts, so that's too low. So I put a 10 microfarad at 50 volts in there. This is a, I can't remember what it read. On this radio here, some of the circuitry is correct using this schematic. Others are correct using this schematic. This is a 43. This one uses a 25 MN6 or MN6, I can't see that. It uses a 10, I got a 10 microfarad in there. It called for a 5. But the resistor is 650 ohms. And that's what this is, although it looks like violet, green, and red, which is 7,500 ohms, but it is not. So the color code must have faded, but that reads just about pretty close to 650, 660, thereabouts. So that's all right. Every resistor in here is within 10%. The highest one is out almost 20% off, but that's it. That's the most. There isn't very many resistors in here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. This down here is a 0.1 I replaced, and that was this capacitor here, because that's what was in there, regardless of what the schematic calls for, whatever's in there. This is the one that looks like it was replaced. It looks like a more modern capacitor. And the resistor checks fine, and it is on the 6D6, which, in this case, matches this schematic, because the 6D6 shows no such capacitor. All right, here it is here, 0.1, and that resistor shows 300 ohms. All right, so that 0.1 shows going across a 300 ohm resistor, which was this capacitor here. That was right across that resistor, which could have been replaced, like I said. But so it's a 0.1 that I put in here, and that resistor, if that was a 300 ohm resistor, the body would have to be orange. It looks brown to me. And I have to get a magnifying glass because I can't read the rest of that code. But I already checked this out, and according to the color code on this resistor, it's right on, within 10%. So, all the resistors have been checked out. None had to be replaced. And all the capacitors have been replaced, with the exception of the electrolytic box up here, which I think I'm going to just leave alone and clip the wires, and I'll have to put a terminal strip in here. But I'm not going to go doing that yet. I gotta come up with a speaker, or Bob's got to come up with a speaker for me, and he's going to see what he can find in his junk pile. So I gotta figure something out for a ballast here. We gotta drop, I think it's 49 volts. You know, it would be an easy solution, but I wouldn't be able to run the pilot light. The pilot light's a number 51. They wouldn't be able to, I'd have to have a filament transformer for the pilot light, like I did with my Hallicrafters S86. You know what would be a simple ballast for this? Get an old 50L6 and put it in here. I'd have to look at a tube manual, see if it's got a 300 milliampere filament, or is it a 600 mil. Well, anyways, get a 50 volt tube, 300 mil filament. There's an octal socket. You should have no problem making that work. It wouldn't be authentic, but neither will it be in this. This is loose now, and the reason it's loose is in here there was all pieces of that cardboard from the cone that I told you I had to break free. So now the rivets It's loose in the frame. It would be impossible to drill these out from the inside. And I can't really cut them with a dikes because I'll destroy my I got heavy duty dikes in my electrical toolbox, but I'm going to destroy the damn things trying to clip them if I can even get in there. Of course, I wouldn't think of using these, but this is the idea. You'd go in there like that. You can get your plier in there and maybe cut it. But anyways, that's a thought. I don't even have a 50L6. I could say I've only got about 7 or 8, maybe 10 tubes in my inventory. And some of those tubes came out of that tape recorder. So I really don't have very much tubes. Maybe I got as many as 15. But I got to get a 50-volt tube to experiment with this here. But I also got to get a speaker in here. Now, maybe I should post this on the Antique Radio Forum. I've only gotten one reply from one of my viewers when I first presented this radio and showed it with this 400 ohm coil here. And I said, I think 400 ohms DC resistance is too low for a 43 or any vacuum tube, really, plate load. The only way I can find that out, I don't have an inventory of parts anymore, but the only way I'd been able to find out if I did have an output transformer that would be the right impedance for a 43 output tube is to measure the primary DC resistance of that output transformer. And let's say I had an output transformer that would work on a tube similar to a 43 output tube, okay? You're following me so far? That's good. All right. Let's say I had that in hand, okay? And I took an ohm meter and measured the DC resistance of the primary of that output transformer. Whatever that DC resistance is, there should be some kind of a formula or something to work. In other words, if it reads 400 ohms DC resistance, let's say, just throw out some figures, maybe it's an 800 ohm impedance transformer. I'm guessing. I'm totally guessing. I don't know this stuff when it comes to math and things. And deep theory, I'm not really all that good at it. That's why I'm called a tinkerer. That's why I call myself a tinkerer. So this is 400 ohms DC resistance. What is the impedance of this? Nobody has been able to answer that yet because maybe they don't know. Maybe I should post that on the Antique Radio Forum. Because this is 400 ohms. This is the only coil in here. And it's connected to the tube. There is no field coil because this is a moving vein or moving iron speak if they want to call it that. And all it uses is one coil. But it's low impedance in my book. Maybe I'm wrong. This tube, let's look it up in the tube manual. I'll tell you what a 43 is. We'll get the tube manual out right now. I thought I had a 1940 tube manual. No, a 1947. I got this off of eBay a few months ago because I'm getting tired of trying to scroll through PDF files trying to find anything. Let's go to a 43 tube here. Hang on a minute. Okay, power pentode. Alright, we're going to look. This is the pinout. Alright, let's go to the specifications of that tube over on the next page here. Well, I can't get the specifications. Here's the 43 right here. And there's a 45. And it don't say what this tube is, but this has got to be the specs for the 45. That's not going to do us any good. So let's go to the 1959 tube manual. That's the only tube manuals I have right now. Alright, this is another one I ordered from eBay a couple months back. They're getting hard to get, too. This is a 1959 RC19, so let's go look that up. I'm striking zero. Oh, it doesn't give you any real specs other than the filament. It don't give you the maximum plate voltage, which I don't care about in this case, but it don't give you the load, the plate load. That's all there is on it, on the number 43 right here. And this is a 1959 book. This is why I got these old books. What do I have to do? Get a book of the 30s? How am I going to find a tube manual in the 30s? I hate looking things up online. I could probably find this tube online, and I'll probably do that. I thought the plate load was 4,500 ohms. I read it somewhere, but it's not telling me in this book here. And this is the RC19, 1959. So I guess the tube is too old even for that, and it's too old for even the 1947. Well, so my question is, you guys out there, and if I don't get an answer here, I'm going to post it on the Antique Radio Forum, because there's a lot of very knowledgeable guys on there. I want to know what the plate load output transformer requirement is for the number 43 tube. This is 400 ohms DC now. What is the impedance of this coil? It sure as hell ain't no 4,500 ohms if that's what this tube requires. Some tubes require 10,000 ohms. Some require 6,000 ohms impedance. It seems to me that the DC resistance of this coil should be a lot higher, in order for it to work. I mean, that's my way of thinking. So if I put in an output transformer and speaker in here that, let's say, it works on a 50C5, which is an all-American 5, typical table radio, okay? Let's say I found one of them, because Bob's going to be looking for me. The 50C5, is that going to be compatible with this tube? Because this tube is too old for my tube manuals. It doesn't give me all the specs on it. So what's puzzling is this. Well, I got two big problems here. This and the ballast. The ballast, I think the simple solution is to put a 50-volt tube in here. As long as the filament lights, don't use any of the other pins on it. The only thing is, I will not have a pilot light. And that would mean adding a tiny filament transformer, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That would spoil. The only place you can put it is over here, and you're going to be near this coil. You don't want a transformer near the coil. So I got a little bit of a dilemma here, guys and gals. And that's where I'm at right now. All right. Before I close out this video, I got one little thing here to show you. It's not related to this radio whatsoever. I picked this thing up. I have no idea what it is. I paid $1 for it at an indoor flea market. It's got a powerful little thing. Came with the batteries. I have no idea what it is. Get you a nice close-up here. Hopefully it's in focus. It says on here, you may not be able to see it, it is an electric rubber band winder. Thanks for watching.